A lot of long-form comic authors use their entire time on a single book to build up to a single story point, or a main villain, or a specific story beat. Author Jonathan Hickman is known for his long-form planning, often pitching a book with flowcharts, graphs, and story outlines that cover years of content. The first 2 years of John Francis Moore's X-Men 2099 explore his cast. They set up and then explore the world and its villains, and then it brings all of those elements that it introduces back together in issue 25. And after that, you can tell that the entire book feels different. Strangely though, author Chris Claremont's run on Fantastic Four doesn't have that same kind of long-form planning. While an argument could be made that Claremont does have a specific focus for his roughly 3 years on the book, those narratives never really tie together, nor do they build on each other. It's more like they echo. Franklin Richards' reality warping powers were a focus in year 1 and then again towards the end of year 2 as Claremont took us back to the reborn Earth. Year 1 also explored the skills and morality of team leader Reed Richards, another thing that Claremont has now returned to in year 3. This is indicative of Claremont's history as a comic writer and the era that he came up in. Modern writers, like Hickman, know that their time on a comic book is limited, so they come in with a plan, they execute it to the best of their ability, and then they move on to the next job. Claremont is best known for writing the X-Men for 20 years. And when you're on a title for 20 years, you don't really need a hard plan. You've got room to breathe, to let your ideas simmer, and you can come back to them when you feel like it. But the rather limited time that Claremont has left on Fantastic Four has forced him to condense his stories. It was only 6 issues ago that the Reed Richards as Dr. Doom story began, and here we are, ready to finish it off now. To be fair, Claremont has vaguely had 2 larger plots per year throughout his entire run, but being forced to finish things up here really carries the weight of the story that is going on forward in a very natural way. This makes the run feel like it has all been building to this, despite the fact that it hasn't been. That is very satisfying to me as a reader, though. So Reed Richards has been trapped in his arch-enemy Dr. Doom's armor. Forced to act the part, Reed as Doom has remarried Sue Storm, fought a couple of bad guys, and finally relocated the family to their new home, Doom's Eastern European homeland of Latveria. But Sue discovered that Reed had been lying to them. He wasn't trapped in Doom's armor, he chose to stay in it. Her fears that something were wrong were confirmed when Victor Von Doom contacted Sue. Teleported out of his armor and back to the reborn Earth, which he calls Planet Doom, Victor fought, killed, and made his way back to his base at the Baxter Building. He then used the Dream Time to contact Sue, warning her about the danger that Reed now represents. Wearing Doom's armor and using his systems means thinking like Doom. And thinking like Doom means becoming like Doom. Activating a teleporter hidden inside of Castle Doom, Sue summoned Victor in his new makeshift armor. Now, the Human Torch and the Thing find themselves caught between their duty to Reed as their friend and team leader, and Sue, who chose to ally with their greatest enemy. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown, episode 12.26, when Reed Richards takes over the world. On one side of the room stands Victor Von Doom. At his feet, pushed over by the teleportation effect, is Sue Storm Richards. On the other side of the room is Reed Richards, still wearing the Dr. Doom armor. Behind him are Johnny and Ben. As Victor vocally claims his armor and throne for himself, Johnny prepares to fight. But Ben hangs back. Reed's armored fist glows. He doesn't know how Victor got Sue to betray him, but Reed will make him pay. Then he springs forward, his armored limbs stretching. Somehow, Reed has found a way to extend his malleable body's properties to Dr. Doom's armor. Sue rears up, using an invisible shield to block Victor from the attack. But Reed has demonstrated his technological ability to dispel Sue's force fields before, and he does so again. Sue's defense gave Victor enough time to rush forward, though, praising Reed's ruthless attack. He does the name Doom proud. Outside of the fight, Johnny encourages Ben to get in there. They need to help Reed. Right? Ben isn't so sure. Reed versus Doom is a pretty fair fight, so let's see what happens. Johnny scoffs at this thought. Somehow Victor has managed to trick Sue. Has he done the same to Ben? We are literally just 2 pages in, but I like the detail work that has been done with the characters already. Reed's ability to stretch is such a part of his person. He is so used to it as both a tool and a fighting style that it only makes sense that he would find a way to apply that ability to his armor. I like Claremont continuing to utilize the force field disruptor as well. That is a good use of established continuity, and it was a small thing that is now being brought to bear in the strongest way possible as Reed attacks Sue. That's crazy. Then, as usual, we've got Johnny, who wants to rush into the fight, his passions burning hot, despite promising to have Sue's back no matter what she chose to do back in issue 30. Ben watches the fight, trusting that Susie would only do this if she absolutely had to. He also knows that Reed and Victor are fairly evenly matched, so waiting to act won't cost the Fantastic Four anything, and it might even show them something important. That is great character work, and again, this is only 2 pages. For Claremont, super economical. I really dig this. So the 2 armored men go at it. Claremont narrates throughout the fight, highlighting their similarity, their great intellect, as well as their major differences. Victor seeks intelligence as a route to power. He would use that power to conquer the world, which he would then remake as a paradise. Things would be better if only he was in charge. To Reed, Victor represents the loss of freedom, and to Victor, Reed represents pure chaos. This shows a great understanding of the 2 men and their relationship, demonstrating right off the bat who they are supposed to be, but not necessarily who they are in this situation. The action scene also serves to draw the reader in, so that's clever. That's another classic Claremont move of throw some action at you right at the beginning, get you hooked, and then he'll slow things down and ramp back up to the climax. As Ben watches this fight, he finds that he isn't quite sure which one of these men really needs to be stopped. But Johnny flames on anyway, turning into the Human Torch. They need to help Reed now, before they lose their advantage. Unsure if that's true, but unwilling to abandon his old friend, the Thing charges into the fight as well. Or he tries to. An invisible field surrounds the 2 men, forcing them to stop. Sue won't let them interfere. There is too much at stake. Reed then fires a negapulse at Victor from one of his gauntlets. Knowing his armor and its weapon systems, though, Victor has prepared for just such an attack. He blocks the blast with an energy shield, but it ricochets at Sue, Ben, and Johnny. Sue uses her force field to block it, but the detonation is so loud that it can be heard in nearby Doomstadt. Once the discharge clears, Reed, Ben, and Johnny are the only ones who remain in the room. Reed immediately scans the castle with his armor and its sensors. Sure enough, there are signals for the 3 of them and for the household staff, but nothing for Sue or Victor. Reed curses the man, blasting the teleporter that brought him here. Victor must have found a way to bypass the castle's security, but at least he'll summon no reinforcements. They've matched wits before, and you would think that Victor would remember who normally wins. Ben also rethinks his burgeoning suspicions that Reed is certainly sounding more Doom-like, so if you didn't pick up on that idea before, well, here you go, they spell it out for you. And really, that's kind of the main point of this entire moment. This isn't our final confrontation by any means. We still have a whole comic to read, so this action sequence is more about drawing us in and planting those seeds of suspicion in Ben. We then cut to Victor and Sue, who move through a series of secret tunnels in the castle that are known only to Victor. No castle would be complete without them, he says. They establish the stakes for us again as well, because Claremont just can't resist, and then we move back to Reed and Company. And this is where Reed finally overplays his hand. He complains about Sue not wearing her uniforms, and as such, he cannot find her using the Fantastic Four's own personal systems. Ben laments the lack of privacy, which has historically been Johnny's thing, but here Reed outright dismisses the very idea of personal privacy. That's a flooping luxury in the kind of lives that they live. But don't worry, y'all. Reed assures us that he will find Sue and Victor. Ben and Johnny both say that they have some ideas on how to do that, actually, but Reed doesn't even listen to their proposals. At all. He's like, shut the floop up, guys. You are the muscle, I am the brains here. If I need something broken, I'll call you. Bye. Insulted, as he should be, Johnny fires up and flies away, shouting not to call him. Ben volunteers to follow him. Maybe he can talk the kid down. Reed honestly doesn't even care what they do. And if Ben didn't suspect that something was up before, then he sure does now. As he begins to move through the castle, he notices that the machines of Doom are hard at work, churning out a new batch of Doombots. Given that Reed doesn't seem to care what they're doing, Ben feels like they're playing into his hands, so he decides to try something unexpected. An hour later, those new Doombots are positioned in the air above the castle. Between them, they form a large scanning grid. As they lower in altitude, they will scan the whole castle for Sue's force field's specific resonance frequency. So, even if Sue isn't using her force field, the scanning will still locate her. Reed figures that if he can find Sue, then he will find Victor as well. Sitting in his throne, Reed finds that he's actually really enjoying the thrill of the hunt. But he anticipates the next move even more. And that would be the kill. I'm hoping that he means killing Victor and not his wife, but right now, it's kinda hard to tell. Which is great. Reed has gone from Reed pretending to be Dr. Doom to just, I am Dr. Doom, obey me, you worms, and I love it. Comic books don't generally send their heroes down the path of a villain, as it's hard to justify their actions and then redeem them when they turn into good guys again. Reed's journey so far has felt really subtle, but still present, like we can trace each moment when Reed has acted more like Doom up until this final issue. Many of his behaviors are rude and uncharacteristic of Reed, but they also aren't so far gone that Reed can never be saved in the eyes of the audience after this, which is a very fine story tightrope to walk. The people whose trust that Reed really needs to earn back are the cast, as they are the ones who are personally insulted or hurt by his actions, so that adds weight to what is going on here, while still leaving the audience in a place where I could believe that Reed Richards can return from this. Again, that's a hard thing to do, and Claremont's pulling it off really well. I also like that totally unintentionally, Reed has positioned everyone else in this comic against him. It's not like he opened this issue announcing that he's Dr. Doom and all will fear and love him. The cast still thinks that he's Reed. But by dismissing Ben and Johnny's potential contributions, and by attacking Sue and Victor without even listening to what they have to say, Reed has insulted everyone in the cast. So while Ben and Johnny might have no clue what's really going on here, they also aren't likely to listen to Reed anymore. Even more impressive is the fact that Reed has been such an a-hole, and it still feels like he has the upper hand. This is due to the cast not being united. We've got Sue and Victor are over there doing their thing, and then Ben and Johnny are separate doing their things, while Reed just gets to sit back and manipulate events around the castle against them. That's pretty cool. Within the castle, Sue can feel the air charged with electricity, like how some people can feel a TV turn on. Victor guesses that Reed is attempting to detect them by finding Sue, as Reed has more information on Sue's biology than Victor's. Sue then volunteers to leave him to keep Victor from being found out, but he dismisses that idea. Reed is going to find them eventually. They'll just have to use this as a way to be found when and where they choose. Outside of the castle, the Human Torch fumes over Reed's dismissal of he and Ben's ideas. He's been a member of the Fantastic Four for years. He has proven himself time and time again. Reed has never spoken to him like that before. That was more like Doom style than Reed's. Somehow, still missing the point, the Torch then shifts his focus. He needs to rescue his sister from Victor first, then they can talk to Reed about being a jerk. Johnny switches to his infrared vision, scanning the castle for out-of-place heat signatures. He finds a set of footprints that head into a wall, and they are cooling off. But Johnny is literally hot on their trail. Inside of the castle, Ben's cobbled together some kind of listening device. He has one end against the wall. It looks like a doctor's stethoscope, which plugs into a device at his hip, which then connects to his headphones. He also complains about Reed's jerkness as he works, but then he comes under attack by Doombots. Elsewhere, Reed is also under attack by Doombots. He figures that Victor must have found a way to turn them against him. Not that Reed is concerned. He's faced Doombots before. But he is insulted by the sheer boldness of this move. Johnny also comes under attack, but all three of the men handle their opposition well. Ben ends up slamming his final robot into the wall, and he actually smashes through it, revealing one of the hidden passageways. Reed then stops the assault by shutting off all of the castle's security measures, which is exactly what Victor wanted him to do, and he smiles. This round goes to him. But Ben and Johnny, both of whom found the secret passageways, now stand on either side of their old enemy. Johnny goes over to Sue, worried that Victor is somehow controlling her. Sue is adamant, though, that she is doing this of her own free will. And at this point, she thinks that the boys should know why. Ben nods. That's why they're talking to her and Victor, and not swinging at him. So what do they do now? Not long after, Sue, Ben, and Johnny present a captured Victor to Reed. This battle may have been lost, he says, but Victor is sure that the ultimate victory will be his. Johnny rolls his eyes at this. God, he is so sick of Victor. All of his boasting, his smugness, the fact that he's just a constant threat in their lives. And he turns to Reed. They should just end the danger here and now, right? Reed agrees, and he orders Johnny to make it so. A sudden blast of flame engulfs Victor, burning him to ash in seconds. Ben stares at Reed. He didn't even hesitate to give that order. Sue, meanwhile, drops to her knees at the pile of ashes that was Victor Von Doom. Reed was the person who once told her that a person of civilization has to have ethics and morals when meting out the power of death. Self-defense she could understand, maybe, but this was murder. Reed stands from his throne. Maybe it was, but his responsibilities are to his subjects. Protecting them sometimes requires distasteful actions. But it's all for the best. He spreads his arms and a holographic display activates behind him. Glistening futuristic cities, beautiful, pristine naturescapes, and massive spacecraft are all shown on the screens. Under his guidance, Reed will move humanity into massive arcologies. This will allow the Earth to recover from the damage that has been done to her by humanity. The best and brightest from the populace shall form the Four Core and spread humanity's gifts to the stars. The rest of humankind will be provided homes and virtual reality entertainment to keep them satisfied. Ben stops him. That sounds a lot like Shadow City, where we met Lockdown and Rosetta Stone back in issues 17 and 18. And very good, Ben. That's what gave Reed the idea, actually. Johnny asks the important question. What about the will of the people? What about their personal right to freedom? Reed replies that those things aren't important. They'll be safe and happy. They won't need freedom. Listening in this whole time, Victor suddenly comes from out of nowhere. He throws Reed across the room and explains that Johnny's flames only appeared to burn him, while Sue turned him invisible. Reed stands ready to fight again, but the Fantastic Three stand against him. They grab Reed and pin him down, and then Victor steps forward. He snaps his fingers next to the Mask of Doom. The armor flies off of Reed, and it returns to Victor. Spreading his arms in his moment of glory, Victor says that no matter what Reed wore or did, there was only one true Doom. Ben catches Reed as he falls back, his body going limp. Sue congratulates Doom on this victory, although she hopes that now his feud with Reed will be over. Crossing his arms like a complete badass, Doom says that they all have their roles to play. His is to bring order to a world of chaos, meaning Reborn Earth / Planet Doom. The Thing points out that Reed destroyed the teleporter that Victor used to get here, but, and I hate this, Doom replies that Reed missed. He fired and he missed, but he didn't bother to fire again. Victor then activates the teleporter, turns away from the Fantastic Four, and returns to Reborn Earth. He wishes his greatest adversaries well. May they enjoy this defeat. And then it's over. While the overall trajectory of Claremont's run hasn't been building to this single issue, I super appreciate the shout out to Shadow City. In much the same way that Claremont seeded the idea of the Chaos Storm and then paid it off with the Reborn Earth being dropped into the 616 reality, or when he seeded Sue Storm marrying Dr. Doom and giving birth to Valeria, then paid it off with Sue Storm marrying Reed Richards inside of Dr. Doom's armor, we get to see another idea presented and then paid off in the long term. This is fairly disjointed, I will admit that, but it is also one of the things that I think Claremont does best. This is why you keep buying a book that Claremont is writing, because at any time he might reference something from an issue ago, or 6 issues ago, or 6 years ago. He rewards long-term readers by validating their purchase of older comics. It might take him some time, sure, but he will get there. Eventually. This is easily one of Claremont's strongest issues writing the Fantastic Four themselves, which is a shame because it includes an evil Reed Richards. All of the characters get some time to shine, either in their personalities or in their skills, like Ben crafting a listening device, or Johnny using his infrared vision to track Sue and Victor. Both of those characters also slowly get to the same point that Sue has been at for days now, figuring out that something has to be wrong with Reed. I appreciate their rational come around too. Johnny is definitely the one who would be more likely to jump to a conclusion one way or the other. This is why he is the one who pitches murdering Victor to Reed. But experience has taught him to trust his sister. Even Ben, who trusts Reed absolutely, can see that something is wrong here, and even if he doesn't want to side with Victor, he knows that they need to fix this situation first. So again, solid character work on both men. Victor Von Doom gets to fill in the role of Reed Richards in this issue, and that's an interesting change of pace. He is definitely the brains here, either explaining Reed's move to Sue, and through her to us, the audience, and guiding the overall mission. And the team, despite the fact that they shouldn't trust this man, listens to him. They might not trust Victor in the long term, but they also know that if anyone can outthink Reed Richards, then it's Victor Von Doom. He is back to his more verbose, dialogue-heavy self, which is jarring coming off of Chuck Dixon's Doom miniseries, but it fits with Claremont's portrayal of the man so far. He is patient, he is cunning, and he bides his time until he can strike and wins the day because of it. Perfect Dr. Doom. And that is perhaps the weirdest thing about this issue. I feel like we're missing a piece of motivation on Victor's part. He fights his way all the way across Reborn Earth, he cobbles together enough defenses to attack Reed Richards, reclaims his armor and his throne, and then he just leaves Earth. But why does he do all of that? He doesn't even stabilize Latveria before he leaves. He doesn't annul his marriage to Sue Storm. He doesn't reestablish himself publicly as being in charge of the country, and thus preventing it from attack or invasion by other forces, which is the very reason that Reed went there to begin with, or anything else. He just leaves. And while it is frightening to think of Doom on the Reborn Earth, utterly unchallenged and getting stronger by the day, preparing for an inevitable return to Earth Classic, I don't feel like I understand why he goes back. Why did he leave Reborn Earth to begin with? It wasn't to save Latveria, and I would argue, once again, that Doom could get his armor from Reborn Latveria way easier than this whole shebang, and that would put him at full strength on Reborn Earth, ready to prepare for his next move. Earth Classic, meanwhile, would have continued to fall under the sway of Reed Richards, making it only easier for Victor to usurp at some point. Had Reed gone unchallenged, he would have needed to defeat the various heroes of Earth, and if that happened, who stops Dr. Doom from riding another Manhattan-sized flagship back to Earth with another army and then taking over the planet? But within that plot hole, we might actually have our answer. Victor knew that wearing his armor would make Reed more like him, and with the trust of the Fantastic Four behind him, no one would question Reed as Doom until it was absolutely too late. Victor didn't save Reed because it benefited him. He didn't even try to save Earth from being conquered. He did this to keep Reed Richards from taking over the planet first. Ruling Earth is Victor's goal, his dream, his end-all and be-all. And here's Reed, his greatest rival, his most hated enemy, using his technology in the best possible position to do it. I think that Victor only stopped Reed so that he could still be the one to conquer Earth first. Simple as that. Outside of that, I have two minor plot points that I want to complain about. The first is that Doom's teleporter is still active at the end of the issue. Like, having Reed blast the teleporter to keep Victor from summoning reinforcements was a smart move. And it was meant to be a smart move, because it is indicating that Reed isn't just a smart guy, even as Dr. Doom, but now he is thinking much more cunning than usual as well. Having Victor just shrug and say, "Well, Reed missed it, he's just that dumb," undercuts that whole idea, and it makes Reed look like a bumbling idiot. This wasn't Reed taking it apart carefully, and maybe he didn't understand some part of Victor's complex inner workings of the device, and then Victor could just fix it easily. No, Reed blew the flooping thing up from 5 feet away. I do not buy that he somehow missed while using a targeting system that he had mastered to the point of making the armor stretchable. How would that even happen? So that's dumb. The second problem I have is how Victor got his armor back. I originally thought that Victor just snapped his fingers and that activated some kind of hidden programming cue and it returned the armor to him. But on a second look, it's possible that Victor undid some kind of hidden latch which released Reed and, returned the armor to him. And again, I don't know if I buy that as a viable plan. Like, if the armor could have been removed by just throwing those latches, why not have Sue throw those latches a week ago when Doom first contacted her? That would have freed Reed and then ended the threat, yes? Well, again, I don't think that ending the threat was Victor's main motivation. First, I don't think that he would reveal a way to undo his armor without him being present to collect that armor immediately. No sense allowing his greatest enemies to gain possession of perhaps his most personal object, his second skin. And two, I would guess that Victor was testing Reed's morality. In all of their confrontations, when these two men of nearly equal intellect have faced off, Reed has always claimed the moral high ground, that he was doing what was right, and Victor was in the wrong. By ordering Victor's death and revealing a plan to conquer the world, though, Reed became exactly like Victor. And that's why he views this ending as a defeat of Reed Richards. It's not because Victor stopped his plan, but because Reed dropped to his level when tempted by the same circumstances. I don't quite buy Victor's outrage about Reed stripping away humanity's freedoms as I don't see a difference between any plan of Doom's versus Reed's plan here. Victor does provide stability and isolation for the citizens of Latveria, but brooks no word against his own. How is that any different from Reed's plan of providing stability and expansion while brooking no word against him? It could just be the sheer crazy pride of Victor Von Doom, where he taking over the world makes sense, but someone else doing it is just crazy, but yeah, that doesn't sit quite as well with me. Overall, though, this issue references our previous adventures pretty nicely. It builds on the recent issues well. Everyone has some good moments to shine, and it's got action, it's got drama, and it closes out our main plot lines pretty satisfactory. But Claremont has more plotline plates spinning on top of thin wooden dowels, so let's move on. I need to cram an entire annual into this episode, so let's go! Fantastic Four Annual 2000 is slightly off of our normal creative team, though. We still have Salvador Larroca and Liquid on pencils and colors respectively, but they are joined by author Louise Simonson and inker Mark Pennington. And right away, you can see it. The change in inker from the usual teammate of Art Thibert is a subtle one, but it is there. Pennington uses a lot more spot blacks than Thibert does, mostly. Later on in the issue, we'll see him do a lot more of these high-contrast, chiaroscuro style shots. I'm familiar with Pennington from his time inking CrossGen's samurai comic, The Path, which was very much defined by its use of negative space. And, of course, we know Louise Simonson from X-Men Dark Sun, issue 4. She and Claremont have worked together before as both an editorial team and as a writing team, so having her step in to write this annual feels and sounds very much like Claremont's normal work. Okay, let's get into this. I'm gonna try to move fast. The Fantastic Four are flying back to New York City in their pogo plane, which is technically illegal because last we knew they had their flight clearance revoked, but nobody seems to care. Ben has the controls, Johnny is flying outside of the plane, and Sue is keeping an eye on the exhausted Reed Richards. Just as they arc past the Statue of Liberty, though, they come under attack. Ben dodges the energy blast well, then he puts the ship down in the waters outside of their Pier 4 home. A horde of paparazzi outside are shielded from the waves by the Invisible Woman's force field. That way, they're able to harass the team with questions as they exit the plane. The Human Torch flies off to find their attacker, and Sue does her best to give the press enough information to satisfy them. Remember, the last that the world knew, Sue Storr married Dr. Doom, and Reed had very publicly gone missing. Sue says that the marriage was a lie, part of Reed's plan to defeat some supervillains, which they have now done. But she says that Reed was injured along the way, and he'll be taking a few days to recover. Thank you all very much for your well wishes. Have a nice day. Goodbye. This is when Reed falls to his knees and suddenly cries out. The image of the techno-organic alien Technarchs hovers over his head, but we don't know why yet. The paparazzi try to move in, but Ben suggests that whoever fired on them might still be around, and they make a real nice target all clumped together like that. He then scans the skies, and somehow manages to spot Technarchs flying in before Johnny does, who is actually in the air. Technarchs' feet are fused together like a rocket booster, and as he closes in, he states an observation. If Reed Richards is not dead, as the commanders thought, then either the Fantastic Four had reached an alliance with Dr. Doom that precluded their alliance with Doom, or Dr. Doom's promises to them were all lies. So clearly Technarchs thinks that Reed as Doom actually was Doom, hence his confusion, and Sue didn't explain that Reed was pretending to be Doom at all, so I get it. None of this helps keep the Human Torch from attacking him, though. He blasts Technarchs with some high-density flames, and the alien is reduced to a techno-organic goo. I don't think that Johnny actually heard it. I think that Technarchs accomplished what it came here to do, and that was get information on their enemies. It drops to the ground, and it oozes away between the pavement before anyone can stop it. Johnny lands and suggests that the team grab a portable containment unit, a la the Ghostbusters, and then search the city. Technarchs is just too dangerous to let go free. Inside the building, we follow Reed and Sue, who went in as the attack began, and Reed pushes her away, shouting, "No!" Sue tries to calm him down, to comfort him, but how can he trust her after she betrayed him to Doom? Her decision to side with Doom and steal his armor has left Reed a mess, and he's seeing things. And here an illusory image of Dorma, Divinity, and Shakti hovers over his head for a moment. Sue tries to explain that the armor was interfacing with his nervous systems. It was a part of him. Without it, Reed is experiencing something akin to withdrawal symptoms. But he can recover from this. She knows that he can. Sue is demonstrating that she understands that Reed isn't himself, despite him lashing out at her. He just needs time to recover. Reed pushes her away again, though. What good does getting better do him now? Dr. Doom is free on his own planet with no competition. All of his main rivals are here. Doesn't she get how dangerous he is? And Sue doesn't. Does Reed mean the Commanders in terms of his main rivals? Those guys are all imprisoned. They're fine, Reed. They aren't a problem right now. Which is when Ben and Johnny enter the room, saying that Technarchs is free and is a problem right now. They'll take over getting Reed to bed, so Johnny suggests that Sue call the kids to let them know that everything is okay. Sue does just that, although I'll admit some confusion on my part in regards to it. She calls them from a computer while she thinks to herself that she needs to let them know that Reed is alive. But Val knew that Doom was Reed when she left. It was Victor's fate that was still up in the air before Valeria went to Haven. But who cares? Sue tells them that Reed is okay, asks after their day, and eventually hangs up. Sue buries her face in her hands, wishing that things could be different. Ben's rocky hands rest on her shoulders. "They got Reed to bed," he tells her, and then he asks how she's doing. Sue explains that she feels terrible for betraying Reed, and doubts whether or not she did the right thing in freeing him from the armor. Sure, he's free now, but has she accidentally broken him? Has she destroyed the Fantastic Four? Ben assures her that Reed is stronger and smarter than that. He's angry right now, sure, and it's coming out on them, but he knows that Reed is really upset at himself. Once he gets through the withdrawal symptoms and has a clear mind again, he'll be back to normal. It'll be fine, Susie Q. Johnny enters the room, saying that he has just downloaded their messages from when they were gone, and then an alarm goes off. Someone must have visited a few adult sites when he was downloading those messages, and now the antivirus software is... Huh? What's that? Oh, it was just messages. The alarm is just a regular alarm? Alright, fair enough. So the messages are all the same, that the Fantastic Four should expect company soon, and the alarms are for that company's arrival. Shakti, Divinity, and Dorma gather along the water's edge, and the Fantastic Three rush to confront them. But this isn't an invasion, hold your horses! It's an invitation. Technarchs has reported back what it learned about Doom and the Fantastic Four's situation. Feeling more betrayed by Doom than by the Fantastic Four, Dorma invites them to join them. They'll all return to Reborn Earth, defeat Dr. Doom, and then kill Dr. Doom, and everything will be swell. Which to me sounds like a great idea. If the Commanders are off of Earth Classic, and it unseats Dr. Doom from power, and then without him the Commanders would be stuck on Reborn Earth, I think that sounds solid. But the Fantastic Three don't, and they say as much. There is a brief struggle between the two groups, naturally, and at first the commanders have the upper hand, naturally, but by now natural fashion, the heroes rally through teamwork and defeat them. The commanders flee, promising revenge! Which is nothing new to the Fantastic Four, and then the team heads inside. Awakened by the battle, though, Reed climbed out of bed and made his way to the nearest computer terminal. He saw Technarchs in his mind before the attack, and then he saw the rest of the commanders in the same way before their attack. Did his bond with the armor somehow make him precognitive? Tired and confused, Reed falls to the floor, which is where the team finds him now. Sue and Ben get him up, but Reed heard everything that went on out there, including a bit where Dorma accused Sue of loving Dr. Doom. Is that why Sue betrayed him? Because she secretly loves Dr. Doom? And Sue was like, no, what are you, suffering from withdrawal symptoms due to being mentally bonded to a suit of armor? That's crazy. The only reason that Dorma thinks that Sue loves Doom is because Sue knew that Reed was in the armor. But, still confused, angry, and paranoid, Reed does not accept her explanation. So Ben hoists him over his shoulder like a baby. He'll take Reed back to bed before he says even more stupid things that he's going to regret in a few days. Yeesh. What a revolting development. Elsewhere in New York, the commanders decide to target civilians in their quest to go home and punish the Fantastic Four. In the morning, the four of them separate and commit several attacks across the city, hoping to draw out the Fantastic Four and split them up, thus countering their ability to work as a team. The attacks are broadcast on the news. The Fantastic Three see the news, and then they head out to stop the attacks. Ben brings along a flamethrower, by the way, having noticed that all of the commanders are kind of weak to fire. Don't bring any Bulbasaur grass-type bullshit in here, baby. After the team leaves, Reed goes to the kitchen for some coffee. His head is splitting. He is still feeling dizzy and lost and just... It's like there's something that is just on the tip of his tongue. He just knew that the commanders were free, but how? There's something that he's still missing. He just can't think of what. Now overconfident in their combat skills, the Fantastic Three do end up splitting up to face the commanders. And the commanders actually win this round. Shakti wraps Sue up in magical silk ribbons, Divinity takes possession of Ben's body, and Technarchs downs Johnny by dropping a child into a body of water. Johnny then has to douse his flames in order to save the kid, and when he surfaces, Technarchs blasts him with some solid sound blasts, knocking him out. Oh, sure, now they get competent. At Pier 4, Dorma and some of her Atlan guards exit the waters, assault the building, and then capture a confused and in pain Reed Richards. She then orders Reed to build them transport back to Reborn Earth. Reed tries to downplay his intelligence, like teleporters were more Dr. Doom's thing, not his. But Dorma knows that the Fantastic Four recently spent time in Latveria, and surely Reed would have looked into his oldest enemy's secrets when he was there. This turns that final key in Reed's mind. Now he remembers. When Victor reclaimed his armor, its removal sent a series of pre-installed commands that Reed had programmed into it. This included a command to free the commanders, who he meant to keep the Fantastic Three busy so that he could go after Dr. Doom. He is horrified at this memory. He is the one who betrayed his family. It's his fault that those civilians were killed this morning. But what can he do? He looks at Dorma and just outright asks, why should he help her at all? The other commanders arrive at Pier 4 with their new hostages, and Dorma smiles. That is why. Reed bows his head in defeat. All right, he'll do it. But he needs proof that Sue is alive first. Shakti loosens her ribbons a bit, exposing Sue's face and mouth, and Sue tells Reed not to help these people. They are worse than Dr. Doom. They cannot let them go free. But Reed smiles at his wife. The Reborn Earth isn't their Earth, so if they're let loose there, it's not really their problem. Plus, they intend to kill Dr. Doom. And that sounds like a good idea to him. Given that I endorsed the very same idea earlier, and clearly the author is trying to show that Reed is still thinking like Doom and is in the moral wrong here, I wonder what that says about me. I'm not immoral. I'm pragmatic. That's what it is. I'm a pragmatic person. This is a good plan. It is an immoral plan, but it is a good plan. I stand by it. Shakti seals Sue back up and suggests that Reed get to work. He does, and in short order, Reed activates a portal. He steps away from the device, revealing a black void that crackles with purple energy. Shakti hesitates before entering the portal. After all, she can't even see the other side of it. Reed offers to shut the portal down if she's scared, but that does it. Insulted, Shakti dives right in. Then Technarchs follows, then Divinity does the same, and finally, we have Dorma. As she approaches, Reed asks her to pass a message on to Dr. Doom. Tell him that Reed has returned his gifts with interest. This comment makes Dorma pause. Then, in one motion, she draws her sword and stabs it into the controls, shorting the portal out. Her warriors blast at the floor, exposing the water beneath them, and they dive in, escaping. Better, Dorma shouts, to conquer a new world than to be trapped in the old one. Sue rushes over to Reed, confused by Dorma's words. Reed explains that the portal generator had a containment module attached to it. So, when the commanders went through the portals, they were teleported and sealed inside of force bubbles. Basically, gift-wrapped for Dr. Doom on the other side. Victor did help save their world. So, as far as Reed is concerned, they've settled their debt. The team is very relieved to see that Reed has returned to his old self. But Reed isn't quite back to normal yet. His arrogant words clued Dorma into his plot, and now she's loose. And he was the one who freed them as well. He doesn't deserve a spot on this team anymore. The rest of the team argued that idea, of course. Reed can't hold himself accountable for those actions. That wasn't him. He wasn't in his right mind. That was Doom's armor and the influence that it had on him. However, Reed won't let that slide. He was the one who made those decisions. He chose to stay in the armor, and when he was tempted to do wrong, he chose to do it. Those actions are his responsibility. So he is no longer worthy to be a part of the Fantastic Four. Other than a few minor problems, I really dig this annual. I love the fact that Claremont and Simonson don't just forget the commanders and leave them hanging in the background forever. To be fair, this is something that happens all the time in comics. Villains are generally beaten and left to languish off-panel in a prison cell until an author decides that they need to get beaten up again, but I don't know. So much of Claremont's time on this volume of Fantastic Four is so isolated from the rest of the Marvel Universe, and honestly even from the rest of the Fantastic Four comics history, to be honest, that it just feels right for the stories of Shakti, Divinity, and Technarchs to be closed out here. The commanders were all written in character, they acted swiftly and decisively like leaders would, and for their final showing, I think that they did themselves pretty proud. It was only their egos that tripped them up at the end, and their egos have been their biggest problem for their whole existence, so I would argue that works. Dorma continues to be the standout character amongst them, and I can't say that I'm surprised that she was left free at the end of this. You see, on the 616 Earth, or Earth Classic as I've been calling it, Dorma was a part of the Atlantean aristocracy and, after a time, fell in love with and married Namor the Submariner. Namor clashed with the Fantastic Four often, and when his affection for Sue Storm became clear, Dorma even once tried to drown her. So the personal animosity that Reborn Dorma has for Sue is an echo of that idea in these comics. But 616 Dorma died years ago, and Namor has been king of the seas basically ever since. Leaving Dorma free in Earth Classic's oceans, she is not only a threat to the Fantastic Four, but a potential usurper to the Atlantean throne, and a great potential foil for Namor. I love the idea of Namor having to navigate a potential civil war as a more bloodthirsty Dorma wins allies to her cause of conquering the surface world, while simultaneously having to contend with his own conflicted feelings towards her. Obviously, that is not the story that we are getting here, but my point is that leaving Dorma free on Earth Classic has more immediate potential for stories, where the other commanders, who are basically all new characters, do not. Now, that's not to say that you couldn't do anything with those characters, but they're much less of a natural fit. I like the idea of Reed suffering withdrawal system thanks to the removal of Doom's armor. This issue specifically highlights that some of the changes Reed underwent were magical, like they were spells woven into the very armor itself. I like that idea, as I do think that Doom would have magical defenses in place, and magic is an area that Reed is not a master of. He would be susceptible to this form of attack. But the potential magical properties of Doom's armor were never discussed in the Fantastic Four issues themselves. Yes, Claremont does bring up the idea of the suit being haunted and its ghost-possessing Reed, but that was a metaphor meant to explain the changes that he was undergoing, not the legitimate explanation for what was happening. So that is a bit weird to me. It just feels a bit off of what we have been presented with in the story so far. I have a similar problem with the whole Reed replaced Doom situation here, as we're given multiple takes on it and none of them seem to be accurate. Sue tells the paparazzi that Reed's disappearance was a fake and part of a ploy to stop the Commanders, indicating that the Fantastic Four allied with Dr. Doom. This isn't the truth, but she is trying to come up with some quick spin to explain things to the paparazzi in a way that will let her get home and get her husband some rest. She doesn't have time to explain the whole adventure, and honestly, she has no proof anyway, so going into things here wouldn't really make sense, and that's fine. But then Technarchs, overhearing this story, reports back to Dorma and company, who show up and are now willing to ally with the Fantastic Four, who they think have been betrayed by Doom as well. But there's no indication that Dr. Doom betrayed the Fantastic Four at all. In fact, no one outside of the Fantastic Four knows anything about Doom's situation right now. Remember, he teleported back to Reborn Earth from Castle Doom. Latveria, in theory, remains under his control, sure, but not his presence. So the commanders have no idea where Doom is or what he's up to. Them seeking out the aid of the Fantastic Four is a good idea. Their goal of returning to the Reborn Earth is a good idea, as even if Doom isn't there, they can still try to conquer that planet. But I really don't understand why they think the Fantastic Four will ally with them at all. They were just told that the Fantastic Four allied with their greatest enemy to take them down, and now they think that the team is going to switch sides? Come on, y'all, you're smarter than that. Simonson, overall, has a very similar writing style to Claremont. I actually thought that Claremont wrote this annual at first, like the entire thing, and it was only when I was double-checking who inked the book that I noticed that Simonson got the writing credit. Her characters are verbose, like Claremont, but I feel like there's an added amount of melodrama to their dialogue. Sue's despair after she talks to her kids is a good example of this, or Reed's constant temper spikes or self-recriminations. It all works given how emotionally raw the team must be right now, and the fact that Reed is coming down from being Dr. Reed Von Doom for a week or two, but it does feel different from Claremont's usual tone. That's not a bad thing, I'm just pointing out that this book does feel a little different, despite the fact that it feels like a Claremont book. It's really weird. This difference is highlighted by the artwork. I'm not sure exactly when this annual was published, as its copyright information just says 2000, but it is drawn by Salvador Larroca, and so was every other Fantastic Four comic published at the time. And given that this issue is double-sized as well, that means that at some point, Larroca was drawing about 2 issues worth of pages in a single month. That's crazy, and the fact that he pulled it off is super impressive. But inker Art Thibert can only ink so many pages, so he stays on the main title, and Mark Pennington gets this annual. Now, given all of that, I'm not sure how much Larroca finished these pages before turning them in. I said earlier that Pennington uses a lot of high-contrast inking, with large black areas and empty white spaces. As this issue goes on, this happens more and more frequently. In fact, by the time you get to page 4, there are almost no backgrounds throughout the rest of the issue. The commander's random attacks on New York civilians are the most background-intensive panels that we get, and they are only like 2 pages, tops. So it's possible that Larroca was able to lay out the panels and pencil in the figures, but not add in tons of backgrounds or detail. Pennington then takes that lack of detail and inks heavily, adding in backgrounds that are just black bricks, or playing with the lighting to hide the fact that there isn't anything drawn there. After the team defeats the commanders and they're half celebrating, there are 4 panels of nothing but the Fantastic Four, and none of them are fully drawn. The blue portions of their costumes and their exposed skin areas are all pure black, the only white being the large 4 on their chests and the background. Given how little this type of lighting was used in the rest of the issue, I don't think that it was a style choice, I think it was a deadline choice, and Pennington had to do the best he could with what he was given. It's an interesting change regarding Larroca's style too. It really reminds me of Scott McDaniel's artwork. Again, I do feel like it fits the mood of the comic for the most part, with Reed struggling with his morality. There's a pall hanging over the team as they struggle emotionally with what they just went through. It all feels right and a little bit dark and moody. It's just so different from what I'm used to from Larroca that it throws me a bit. It is a neat experiment, and I kind of wish that he could pair with an inker who would experiment like this a little bit more. You could get some really interesting artwork out of furthering this kind of style. This is a solid follow-up to issue 31, I gotta say. This issue basically acts as like issue 31 and a half, following up upon the fallout from issue 31, and then setting things up for what our final issue of Fantastic Four is going to explore in issue 32. That's right, baby. We're approaching the end. Although this next bit has nothing to do with our main narrative, I do have to say that there is a short story after our main story in this annual. Written by Chris Claremont, drawn by Greg Scott, inked by Derek May, and colored by Steve Oliff, who we're familiar with from X-Men Dark Sun, the story stars Marvel Girl, aka Valeria Von Doom, in the alternate future that she comes from. She basically sneaks out of her house because her friend Sam did the same thing earlier. Valeria follows her into New York City, passes by a street festival, goes to a nearby bar, and there she finds her friend Sam, who is Samantha Dunbar, aka Lancer. The bar is filled with gangsters, hitmen, assassins, and worse, and together, the 2 women beat the ever-loving crap out of everyone there. When asked afterwards why she does this, Lancer explains that tonight is the night before her wedding anniversary. Every year since losing her husband and getting her powers, Lancer goes out and tries to purge herself of her anger as Lancer, so that on her anniversary day, she can just be Samantha. Valeria says some kind words about them being a family now, and the story ends. It's a fairly cute story, even if it is divorced from everything else that's going on with the Fantastic Four. It's mainly used to explore Valeria and Lancer's characters, although I would argue that this doesn't really add anything new to them at all. It does highlight how close the 2 women are, but neither one of them have interacted in this collection in like 6 issues, and even then their relationship didn't matter to the story at all. I think that issue 25, where Valeria meets modern-day Lancer for the first time, would have been a much better place to place this story. There is a really weird bit where the narration about Lancer says that Valeria's father, who is not specifically called Dr. Doom or even Victor Von Doom, he's just called her father, activated Lancer's latent mutant powers. Now, there was very little explanation for what Doom did to give Lancer powers in the Reborn event books. He just shot her full of nanites, and she got superpowers, whoop-de-doo. The closest that we ever came to an explanation was Claremont saying that everyone on the Reborn Earth has the potential to develop superpowers, and Doom activated Samantha's potential. What that means, who knows, because it sure as floop didn't go anywhere, but never before has Sam been referred to as a mutant. There is a possible explanation in the fact that this story happens in a potential alternate future. So maybe in that reality Samantha was a latent mutant, but if that's the case, then why tell us that here? If this story isn't meant to inform us about Valeria and Lancer with in-continuity information, then why tell us this story? None of it matters. The artwork in the story is fairly realistic compared to Larroca's work in the rest of the issue. It actually kind of reminds me of Joe Bennett's work from the Peter Parker Spider-Man Annual 1999 that I covered back in episode 12.12. It's fairly detailed with some really nice shots of New York City, but the details on people are lacking in finesse. There's one shot of Valeria's face that's just, ugh. All those details are kind of smudged, and it gives the artwork a rushed or unfinished look. It does convey the story well enough, but I don't personally care for it. It's not terrible artwork by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a definite step down from Larroca's work that we've been looking at otherwise. Next week, I will be covering our final issue of Chris Claremont's run on Fantastic Four. It is not going to be our last episode, so if you just got very excited, I'm sorry to bring you down. We have issue 32 left to cover, which will be our next episode, and then there is a whole graphic novel left to do, which will be an episode in and of itself, and then I would like to do one final wrap-up episode, just explore what Claremont accomplished or failed to accomplish, and then we'll close this whole adventure out. Finishing this set of comics has really been a quest, and I kind of want to take a moment to appreciate that. Join me next week for Comic Book Breakdown episode 12.27 of Fantastic Four Volume 3, Into the Abyss. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.